The National Electoral Council of Venezuela coordinated with international organizations the observation program for the upcoming elections. UK health authorities have left several COVID-19 restrictions in Scotland with only precautionary measures remain in place. The UN Human Rights Chief urged accountability for the massive explosion at Beirut port a year ago. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Bray Gomez. The Venezuela National Electoral Council coordinated with international organizations with observation programs for the upcoming regional and municipal elections to be held next November. The president of the National Electoral Council, Pedro Calzadilla, met with the head of the Council of the Electoral Experts in Latin America, Nicanor Moscoso, to discuss the requirements to develop the activities. Moscoso was present at the audit to guarantee the transparency and consistency of the voter data for the democratic process. These and other activities will be part of his schedule during his visit to the country. In 2020, the Council of Electoral Experts was able to corroborate the legitimacy of the electoral process that took place for the renewal of the Venezuelan parliament. Brazil's Supreme Electoral Court requested the Supreme Court of Justice to open legal proceedings against President Jair Bolsonaro for his negative remarks against the current voting system. The Supreme Electoral Court unanimously approved to open an investigation against Bolsonaro for unfounded accusations, who has asserted that the electronic ballot boxes are not reliable just 14 months before the presidential elections. Bolsonaro, who faces a worst moment at popularity, intends to run for re-election next year, although so far polls place him behind his greatest political adversary, former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Colombia called on Haiti to guarantee the legal and medical rights of the Colombians detained for alleged participation in the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse. Vice President and Foreign Minister Marta Lucía Ramirez asked for legal representation and medical care for the detained Colombians in a letter to Haiti's ambassador. The missive was sent after the visit carried out by the Colombian consular mission, which found irregularities in the detention and assistance to the citizens supposedly involved with the assassination. Haiti, which was already struggling with political paralysis and gang-fueled violence, was pushed deeper into turmoil by the killing of Moïse. The Congress of the ruling Sandinista National Liberation Front unanimously nominated this Monday the President of the Republic, Daniel Ortega, as its candidate for the general elections of November the 7th. The organization's assembly also ratified the current Vice President, Rosario Murillo, as the leader's running mate. At the same time, the Sandinistas nominated 92 candidates, an unequal number of alternates who will run for the seats of the National Assembly. The people of Nicaragua and the Sandinista militancy recognize in Daniel and Rosario two first-class politicians who have managed to execute a project of social, economic, and political transformation. Ecuadorian teachers mobilized in several cities this Monday as they continue to call on the Constitutional Court to ratify the intercultural education law and as the hunger strike by some entered its 22nd day. Protests took place in the capital Quito, as well as Guayaquil, Santo Domingo de los Achilas, Puerto Viejo, and Latacunga. The president of the National Union of Educators in Pichincha province, Clever Hidalgo, said that at least 80 members are on hunger strike, demanding the national government and the Constitutional Court ensure that the law that would bring benefits to both educators and their students is implemented. In Quito, demonstrators rallied outside the headquarters of the Social Security Institute, where clashes with the police were reported. The Bolivian Legislative Assembly moved into its new headquarters in order to save on rent payments and ensure adequate facilities for parliamentary work. Our correspondent Freddy Morales brings us more details in the following report.
According to tradition, first of all, one thanks the Pachamama Mother Earth for the gifts received and asks for her permission to continue carrying out activities on her soil, in this case a 20-story building that now houses the Legislative Assembly of Bolivia.
From now on, the legislative work will change. There were fellow deputies who, sadly, I must say, had to attend to their social movement in Murillo Square. Now that's over. That's history.
The facility was annexed to the building constructed more than a century ago. Right-wing lawmakers did not attend the inauguration, as them condemned the quality of the new premises, which they described as luxurious.
We are very sad that some opposition politicians, some assembly members don't agree with the infrastructure that the assembly and the executive should have, which means that they agree that the state should continue as a tenant. At this moment, we are paying for many offices of the Legislative Assembly in different places.
President Luis Arce recalled that this project was also suspended during the administration of the de facto government in 2020, given the interest in showing that the state is inefficient.
This is another of the wars that the coup government interrupted, like hundreds of thousands of works all over the country that were delayed due to a coup mongering attitude, because everything that the mass party had done was wrong. Since we returned to the government, we immediately resumed public investment. We have resumed all these works.
The head of state hopes that the renovation of the legislative facilities will serve to engage all lawmakers in working for the interests of the country and the majority of the Bolivian people.
We are absolutely sure that in these facilities of the Plurinational Legislative Assembly, there will be no place for the betrayal of the homeland, no place for the traitors. These are for the organized people who will fight for the people, for the pockets, for the stomach of the Bolivian people.
The new headquarters was built across 44,000 square meters on metallic earthquake-resistant foundations. It consists of 20 floors plus 5 basement levels and cost $70 million.
Freddy Morales, teleSUR, Bolivia.
The Biden administration will implement accelerated expulsion procedures to immigrants who continue to cross the Mexican-U.S. border. The Department of Homeland Security announced the measure, which began last week with the expulsion of 73 families who were sent back on planes to Central America. On Monday, at least 3 to 4 Guatemalans were victims of such procedure. U.S. Congress members say the government adopted the initiative to the increase of immigrants who have crossed the border in the recent weeks, a number over 20,000 families that have caused the collapse of Border Patrol facilities. Social and civil organizations who blame Donald Trump because of his inhumane treatment to migrants will, in the following days, take a similar stand against Joe Biden. President Joe Biden has once again called for gun control measures in a meeting with the Latino leaders at the White House this Tuesday to mark the second anniversary of the El Paso mass shooting. 2 years ago, a gunman targeting Latinos opened fire at a Walmart in El Paso, killing 23 people in an attack that stunned the United States and neighboring Mexico. Biden used the anniversary to renew his call for reforms to firearm laws. The president claimed that his administration is the first to make a comprehensive effort to tackle the threat of domestic terrorism, from reducing online radicalization to disrupting networks that incite violence. Gun violence is on the rise in the United States, accounting for more than 600 mass shootings in 2020, up from about 400 in 2019, I meant. We'll be right back after this very short break. Welcome back. Almost all Scotland's remaining COVID-19 restrictions will end shortly, but a number of mitigation measures, including face masks, will remain in place, Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon said on Tuesday.
COVID restrictions, I will confirm that from next Monday, Scotland will move beyond the current level 0 restrictions, and I will set out the basis for that decision. However, in line with the cautious approach we have taken throughout this pandemic, I will also set out a number of mitigation measures that will remain in place. Firstly, it will continue to be the law, subject to existing exemptions, that face coverings must be worn in all the same indoor settings as is the case now. We will keep this under review, but my expectation is that face coverings are likely to be mandated in law for some time to come.
The island of Martinique received medical equipment and personnel sent by the French government to help fight a surge of COVID-19 infections. The aid consists of a medical intensive care unit to relieve hospitals dealing with the rise of cases. Also, military planes are taking some critically ill patients to the French mainland for treatment. According to National Health Agency figures, Martinique's current infection rate is more than 1,000 cases per 100,000 people. Infections are also spreading fast in Guadeloupe. The rise is blamed in part of trouble between the islands and the summer festivities, as well as a very low vaccination rate. President of Cuba, Miguel Diaz-Canel, called to strengthen medical attention in the central province of Ciego de Ávila, given the epidemiological situation due to COVID-19. Diaz-Canel directed the Ministry of Health to design a plan to send reinforcements of doctors and nurses to the province to aid a hospital struggling with the surge in COVID cases, while recognizing that there are difficult weeks ahead in the fight against COVID-19. The President stressed that there cannot be mistakes in providing the best care for the population and called for solidarity from all social sectors in the country.
There is the knowledge of our doctors, we have the knowledge of our scientists, the readiness of our health system, the joint work that all institutions are doing, but we also need proper participation with responsibility. From our population, a lot of solidarity from people is important because we must face this together. We must know how to overcome this complicated situation. I believe that this is the call that we must make to our population.
Thousands of Argentine youngsters with pre-existing medical conditions started being immunized this Tuesday with the Moderna vaccine. In people between the ages of 12 and 17 who suffer from diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular, kidney, and respiratory diseases, cancer, or are affected by intellectual and developmental disabilities, among other conditions, are eligible for the shots. The goal is to immunize about 900,000 adolescents before the Delta variant spreads massively in the South American country. Argentina has administered the first dose of vaccine to 25.3 million people and two doses to some 7.3 million out of a total population of approximately 4 to 5 million. Researchers in Norway have detected a new variant of COVID-19 called P6, as reported by the Pasteur Institute of Montevideo. According to a study carried out by the Interinstitutional Working Group on Genomic Surveillance of the virus, the strain would have emerged around November 2020 and contributed to the first wave of COVID-19 registered in the country. It represented 26% of cases in December, but this rose to 76% in February. It was displaced by another variant known as P.1 and first detected in Brazil in March of this year, with no further records of it since the end of April. Thousands of people fled their homes north of the Greek capital on Tuesday as the wildfire broke out of nearby forests and reached residential areas. The hurried evacuations took place just as Greece grappled with its worst heat wave in decades, with temperatures reaching 42 degrees Celsius in parts of the capital. The blaze sent a huge cloud of smoke over Athens. Earlier, authorities closed the Acropolis and other ancient sites during afternoon hours. The extreme heat, described by authorities as the worst hit in the country since 1987, has strained the national power grid, leading to blackouts while fuel wildfires. We have more stories coming up after this final short break. Welcome back. The United Nations Human Rights Chief urged accountability for the massive explosion at Beirut's port a year ago that killed at least 214 people and destroyed thousands of homes and businesses, the spokesperson of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Marta Hurtado, said on Tuesday.
As the despair deepens and anger mounts in Lebanon, UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, is today stressing the urgent need for the Lebanese government to ensure a transparent, effective, thorough and impartial investigation into what happened last August and to hold those responsible accountable.
The United Nations General Assembly on Monday established a new platform to improve the lives of African descendants who have for centuries suffered the ills of racism, cultural discrimination, and the legacy of enslavement around the globe. The 193-member body unanimously adopted a resolution establishing the UN Permanent Forum of People of African Descent, a 10-member advisory body that will work closely with the Geneva-based Human Rights Council. The new forum will contribute to the promotion and full respect of the rights of people of African descent. The move comes just days after the Human Rights Council established a panel of experts to investigate systemic racism in policy against people of African descent, prompted by the police killing of George Floyd in 2020. Iraq's Culture Ministry received over 17,000 looted Asian artifacts recovered from the United States and other countries, a restitution described by the government as the largest in the country's history. The majority of the artifacts date back 4,000 years to ancient Mesopotamia and were recovered from the U.S. in a recent trip by Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi. Other pieces were also returned from Japan, Netherlands, and Italy. Iraq's antiquities have been looted throughout decades of war and instability since the 2003 U.S.-led invasion. According to the Foreign Ministry, at least 5 shipments of antiquities and documents have been returned to Iraq's museum since 2016.
There are still thousands of Iraqi artifacts smuggled out of Iraq. The laws support us in Iraq and the laws of the international community and the United Nations, as well as the laws of the countries to which the antiquities fled.
Supreme Leader of Iran Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei endorsed President-elect Sayyid Ibrahim Raisi on Tuesday, and the ceremony celebrated in Tehran. Raisi, a 60-year-old jurist with an extensive career, won elections on June 19 with 62% of votes. And his speech during the ceremony, the new president reaffirmed the need of gaining back the thirds of the discontent sectors and was too critical with government management, while also stating that the people would not be conditioned by the sanctions imposed by the United States. In the investment ceremony, Ayatollah Khamenei suggested President Raisi that he urgently attend to the formation of a popular government, a necessary step towards obtaining consensus in a country that faces constant threat from the Western powers. The 54th Foreign Ministers meeting of ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations, began in Tuesday via video conference. China and the United States take part in the organization's talks as influential economic and political partners of the member countries. China warns on the intentions of the Secretary of State of the U.S., Antony Blinken, who participates on this occasion with the purpose of talking about Beijing's presence in the Meridional Sea, trying to steer into a conflicting scenario between China and its Southern Asian neighbors, according to Chinese officials. Foreign ministers from 27 member states discussed on the first day of the meetings topics related with regional cooperation and security. The talks were centered mainly in the COVID-19 pandemic's rising numbers and ways to manage the situation, as well as strategic Asian community development projects in infrastructure, commerce, science, and technology. Tanzania Minister of Defense and National Service Elias Kidima died while undergoing treatment in Dar es Salaam. The Secretary of the Member of Parliament's office confirmed the death, through the cause has not been made public yet. Kidima was a member of Parliament for Ishid constituency in Singaya region. Elias became the first high-ranking official in Tanzania to die since President Samia Suluhu Hassan assumed power in March following the death of the predecessor, John Magufuli. His death is a step back to the government as the country is working to defend its territorial integrity since the outbreak of violent insurgency in Mozambique. The United Nations mission of Afghanistan has called for an immediate end to fighting in urban areas, stressing that civilians are bearing the brunt of the violence as the Taliban advances and foreign troops leave the country. The UN Secretary General's spokesperson Stefan Dujarric stressed that the Taliban ground offensive and Afghan National Army airstrikes are causing great harm and noted deep concern about discriminated shooting and damage to health facilities and civilian homes. The latest reports show that 40 civilians have been killed and over 100 injured within the last 24 hours in the Kent city of Lashkargah, where the Taliban appears close to taking control. Meanwhile, in Kandahar, at least 5 civilians were killed and 42 wounded. We've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at teleSUR English. And you can also follow us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. Plus, you can catch up on our shows on our YouTube channel. For teleSUR English, I'm Ray Gomez. Thank you for watching.